beginning with Maya, we're going to start by creating a project window. Managing a project folder is extremely important in this class. You hear me talking about it all the time. I'm going to go to New. I'm going to make a name here, so I'm going to call this 160. It's the class number. This is actually Spider-Woman. And remember, we're kind of doing these kind of superhero-y characters because of the simplicity of the geometry. We really want to make it simple to begin with so you guys understand processes. Then we really get into your own character and it can kind of be a little more complex. So we've got a name. We want to make sure that we go to a folder or an area on your drive that you specifically want. In the class, we don't want to rely on the desktop, but typically kind of start there, just and then move my files where I want. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Typically, I don't like to leave things on my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and choose that. So I'm selecting a folder. So now I'm using users, KLeaper or whatever. So I'm going to say accept. Nothing changes here because all we did is create a project folder. So let's just go and minimize Maya. This project folder we created here. Just open it up. You can see that inside of it, some folders that were created for me. This source images is where we're going to want to put our image planes. So we talked a little bit about these in the class, but and you'll make your own later on. These ones are already created for you. This is a different set, but essentially the same as Superman, whatever. Just basic, simple human form or whatever. So once I get these into my source images folder, I should be able to go back into Maya. And the thing that you want to pay attention to is that when you come back into Maya, you are set to that project, but whenever you come back to your project, you're always going to want to go back and select your project folder and set it. That way you're always looking to that project folder. And then most things should work really well for you. I'm going to leave this perspective view and go into our fore view. We're going to click on to the image plane button for this panel, for the front panel. I'm going to select the front image. Say open. Then I'm going to repeat for the side image. Open. I'm going to shift select them both. So one's already selected. You can see it's green. The way it's not green. So I'm just going to select both of them and just set a scale on both of them. Let's say around 8. It's kind of big. That's fine. Generally speaking, about 30 centimeters I find it to be a good size. And remember the grid there's that grid there is 20 centimeters. So that gives you kind of an idea of what there is. It's mostly just about merging things that we want to worry about. In the past, I've been having trouble with having image planes dead center, but like I said, let's just do a quick test while we're here. I'm going to throw a cube out there. Make this thing big. What the problem has been in the past is, can I actually select through and get both sides of this object? Let's take a look. So in the past, those things have kind of been problematic because they block the selective process, but that looks like it's going to stay there. So maybe we'll try it for a little while, just leaving these right where they are. That's probably a little bit of a digression there that we probably shouldn't have seen, but always what I'm getting at here is that I've always kind of done things a certain way, and so what I want to watch out for is just repeating the same thing I've always done. I always want to watch out for if you're just repeating what you've done and not checking to see if you still need to do it. So I just want to see that real quick. So you can see that the front image is a little off, so I'm going to grab the front image and just move it over, aligning the center of the image with that dark origin line. So this is going to help us be centered on the x-axis, which we want to kind of maintain that. Pretty important. This side view is less important, you know, whether it's lined up this way, you can be a little less controlling on that one. That looks good. So last thing I usually do here is just on my perspective view, I don't really need to see or don't want those in the way. They're kind of in the way. I don't really want to see them. They do kind of look cool, but I'm just going to go to my image planes. So I'm going to show image planes. I'm going to turn those off. And that just makes it so I can see my model. I don't really want to see the image planes. I want to see my model. So looks good. I'm going to put down a save here. So this is my first save, so I can just do a save scene. Now, again, I don't know why it keeps going right back to my source images. What's happening in the class? We'll have to take a look at that. But typically, it should take me right to my scenes folder. I'm going to go back in my scenes folder. The name of this is going to be, this is what I want you all to follow when we're doing these kind of naming conventions, is Spider Woman _img and then 01. So the img is going to be for image. That means that there's image planes in here. So this is usually my first save. Probably won't make more than one of these, but I always put an increment anyway. So this is going to be kind of indicative of all of our saves. Let's see, save. Okay, so we're going to start with body. So up in the shelf, we're going to start with our polygonal cube. To begin with, we want to create enough complexity to the object to be able to create the human body. So as is, not really there yet. So if we click onto the polygonal cube, we get some different things here that we can see. The polycube 1 as the input is what we're after. And the numbers that we're trying to put in here, actually putting in 3, tab 6, tab 3, is general setup for character. And as you progress with your skills, you should look at different combinations here, or different methodologies. But this methodology really revolves around thinking about your divisions and then kind of planning ahead for what you're going to do next. So this gives us our shape right here. I'm just going to zoom in on the top view. So notice how I'm using my orthographic views to help me right off the bat. These buttons right here throw people off for a long time. This is component mode. This is edit in component mode. I'm going to hold here too. You can see it. Should select by component mode. This is select by object mode. And these two things we're going to want to try and get used to as we go. We want to be in component mode. You can see the object just goes straight into these vertices right here. So let me zoom out a little bit. So what we're doing is marquee selecting the corners. So I'm going to click and drag over a corner. It makes a selection. The important thing to notice is that it's selecting all of the vertices down the side with marquee selection. So anything inside a marquee selection is selected. And hold down Shift, I'm going to do the other 3 corners. And notice that when I do marquee selections, I start away and then go into the object. I'm trying to be too careful. The whole point of that is to try and make this faster to select. I'm going to, right now in the beginning, just grab these tools over here, but pretty soon I'm going to just start using key commands. So start recognizing when I'm start using key commands for all this stuff. So I'm going to use the scale tool. I can go one at a time like this to get this kind of rounded out shape. But they have also these other constraints on these tools. And remember, I really want you to utilize the constraints on the tools when you begin. So this is another constraint. It's kind of awesome. It's makes it rounded like that. So it's both at the same time, which is kind of a time saver. So that's kind of an important process to just get the object rounded before you start making the rest of the body. And you'll notice as we start doing more and more things, start making the legs will be rounded, the arm will be rounded, the neck will be rounded. And this process is starting right here at the very beginning. I hope you notice how it starts to repeat. I'm going to do a marquee selection over the entire thing, just right over any of the views. I'm going to select that entire cylinder. I'm going to look in my front view, I'm using the space bar to maximize my window. But if I put my cursor in a window, maximizes it, so I don't have to click, I just have to have my cursor in the panel. Get my move tool, I'm using the handle, I'm going to try and center that as much as possible. I didn't use the button over here, so I did use the key command, so just notice here I'm going to use the scale, so that's R. Just going to scale it from the center about, just kind of hit it somewhere around in there. I feel like that image plane is a little less somewhere like that. Go back into my component mode. Sorry, my image plane seemed a little off. I just want to get that before I get going. Then I'm just going to stretch this out. What we're kind of aiming for is a little bit, you know, want to get quite down to the crotch, but we don't want to this is all going to change in a moment, so you know that looks about good. I don't want to be too careful with it. From the side, looks a little bit wide maybe, so it just doesn't really matter. We're going to have to move all these anyway. And that's kind of my first step, is getting that kind of shape. So it's just a cylinder, it's now bigger. Okay, looks pretty good. So now we'll go into my side view. So we're going to use our wireframes, and so this is the buttons that we're talking about up here. These are different views for your character. We don't have shaded or whatever, but this is wireframe, so I can see through. This is wireframe, so you can, if I click away, you can see that you still see the wireframe and the shade at the same time. It's kind of nice. That's the difference. Or we just go wireframe, and in this case wireframe is kind of nice because I want to be able to see through the character. Let me zoom out here. So I'm going to go into component mode. Zoom in a bit. And all we're going to do is just grab these and move them and scale them. And this is just kind of a quick run through. So I'm just moving and scaling them. And a lot of people feel like you have to do this individually with individual pieces, but it actually makes sense to do it this way with the whole row. And you can see I can really kind of line them up. So I'm just going to kind of start to think about where I want these as well. So in the class, kind of have you guys do this a little bit more step by step, but I kind of talk about how as you start getting used to this stuff, you start saying, oh, I'll just kind of do a little bit more as I kind of know what I want to do. This is, you know, not enough edges to really make the shape that we want, so we'll probably end up adding a couple more, probably one especially up here, down here. You know, you can see how there's some places that need to change. It's just the beginning though, so let's take a look here. So this is what I was talking about with the image plane sticking through. This is the problem, is that your model here now is going through the character and we can't see the whole entire thing. Let's turn our image planes back on. So that's a deal breaker for us. We're going to push these back off the grid. I'm going to select the image plane, just move it off the grid. See how that covers the character? I don't want that. Select the X plane, I'm just going to move them back. So I'm just moving them away. Okay. So experiment made. Now we know. So we're going to go through here now on the front and just take a look. So tempting to kind of make the neck, and also tempting to kind of come out to the shoulder. Really kind of the shoulder starts sort of around in here and it kind of comes across this way. It's a complex shape right there. So what we're going to try and do is kind of draw this shape here. So we'll actually keep it kind of right where it is. Come to the next row down. I'm just going to come out a little bit and then the next row down. Kind of follow along the form here. This one. So I'm just making row selections. And I want to be trying to select and move as many pieces as I can right off the bat. Just kind of get the general shape of the character. Let's turn off these image planes up here too. There. So doing a lot of like experimentation on you while I'm doing the video, but I guess it's good to see. So, you know, always kind of trying to test out things, make sure that things are still an issue. So it's not an issue to select through image planes, but definitely an issue to see. So you can see it's a little bit, I can see more of the shape in the front, which I want to see. Same with the side, I'm sure. So that's nice. I'm just going to space bar. So just with a little bit of editing, you can see it's much more humanish right off the bat almost. Looking good. I'm just going to go back into the side view. And again, I'm being a little quicker than I was in the other class. You know, in class rather, but so to begin with, we'll just kind of start with this being kind of the breast. Probably we'll end up making another row here somehow, and just kind of, this is actually more of the breast. That's probably have to come back actually a little bit. It's the center. I'll do something like that for now, maybe. Notice how I'm making marquee selections of the rows, which is really actually selecting both sides. So notice that both sides are updating as I go. Don't need to worry about too much because we're only modeling half the character anyway. But you know, it's I like to kind of keep things symmetrical for a while. Just going to kind of try and match the same sort of curvature with this row. And you know, we're losing our ability to be easily selectable in the front, so it's going to be, we're losing some of that quality, but I want to watch out for that a little bit. But this is will lay us out pretty good. So just starting to kind of think about now. There's kind of this hip area here that we want to start to think about. So kind of start to define that a little bit. Also, let's kind of get a little tight over here. As you look at the side, you should kind of, you're looking at the side, so this row right here should kind of be a little bit wider than you imagine, especially for the hip area. So this row is maybe just a little bit low, come up a little bit. Scale it in a little. It's not, I'm not going to be too worried about those shapes too much. I'm going to have to come back for them. And then lastly, we'll just kind of come up and bring these, and this should probably be basically top. These, try and kind of smooth that out a little bit. Kind of create kind of an arc here. It's kind of a weird shape at the bottom, so you want to not get too weirded out by it. Sometimes once you get your legs on, it'll make more sense to you. So that's looking pretty good, and then we'll take a look at from the front now. And we'll go wireframe here and just kind of try and take a look. It's a little harder to make selections this way, so you can see that now that row selection starts to disappear for us. So kind of an easier selection than the vertex selection right now would be an edge selection. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to right click on the character's body. If you're in wireframe, that's a little bit hard. It'll want to grab the image plane behind you sometimes. So it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to grab this, but if you hit an edge, it'll do it. But if you kind of go in the middle where there isn't a face, it will always want to grab that image plane if you notice. So just be careful of that. So if you are in wireframe, you have to really hit an edge. Or if you're in shaded solid, you can actually hit it right in the center. So it's nice to know. So what I'm interested in is edge. Cool thing about edges is you can double click on an edge and it actually selects the entire row. So if we look at this in wireframe, you can see some of these are a little more complex. I mean, it would be fairly easy to make that selection, but this one's a little harder. There's like kind of like that, right? So that's that row. This is, oops, this row. Okay. So let's just take a look. Actually, don't think I did anything on the top here. Looking over here, I didn't do any vertex changes up on the top. Let's get the shoulder fixed up and got ahead of myself. Got excited. It's exciting. Exciting stuff here. Maybe we'll do something kind of. Like I said, we're probably going to put another row in here. So I'm going to come a little bit lower and maybe put it in here. So this will be kind of the coming up into the arm. You know, I try not to worry too much about this because it's going to be edited again. And once I get an arm on here and stuff, start working on the shoulders, this whole area is going to want to be, it's going to be affected by that, and it's going to make things kind of change. I'm just kind of making a rounded area up in the top. I feel like this is probably going to have to come out like that. That's really the top of the breast, so it's going to be the wider part. Okay, so let's take a look now, perspective. That looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the front now. So some of these actually look pretty good, but you can see how kind of probably want to round some of these in different ways. But let's not worry about that right now. I'm just going to go back into that edge selection, grab this one, scale this in a little bit. Might be easier to see a little bit wider. I'm just going to try and just get back on those lines a little bit. Now when you do the top, you'll see it won't go around with an edge selection. It's broken by the top of the cube. Remember, this is a cube, so there's a corner there, so it's not actually a loop up there. So the other ones are actual loops, but those ones aren't, so the top and the bottom are a little harder to edit. I'm not too disappointed with that, but I'm going to go into vertex. Let me just come up a little bit higher. And then on the bottom, let's make a selection of that. Let's see, it's pretty easy to grab, pretty easy to see still. So let's bring it in a little bit. And that's looking pretty good. So the front, maybe we can come down a little bit. I want to just kind of follow the undo for selections if you do something like that. So I'm try and follow the line of the hip a little bit there, and then looks pretty good. Again, let's take a look. Perspective. Pretty good. Okay. So usually here's where I kind of hit a milestone. So now I have torsos finished. Kind of like to think of these saves when I do a save as like kind of, okay, milestone, torso, leg, foot, arm, hand, maybe head, splitting character, you know, things like that. So this is a pretty big milestone, so I'm going to do a save scene as. So I don't want to copy over the old one, the image. Don't see my other save, but anyway. Oh no, I don't want to copy over the image because I haven't done that. This is my first geo. So what we're doing here, sorry, I got confused. You can change this from image to GEO for geometry. So I could put maybe mesh there, which might be a little better. Maybe I'll start moving to mesh instead of geo. Yeah, let's try it. Let's move that over. Makes more sense for the people doing game stuff and everything anyway. So I'm going to come back out here so you can see the save operation. So that just means that now the first save was for just image plane. Second one is that there's geometry there, and that or mesh, and it's 0, 1, which means that the first step. So for me, that usually means torso, and that's saved. All right. So now we're going to get into the real power of the process of working with cubes.